The distant hum of alien engines filled the museum as I carefully polished the glass case containing humanity's oldest working firearm. My job as curator of Earth's historical weapons museum wasn't exactly exciting, but that changed the day the Galactic Federation delegates arrived. Primitive projectile weapons, sneered Ambassador Thax, his crystalline body reflecting the dim lighting. Your species wasted centuries on gunpowder, while the rest of us developed plasma technology. The other delegates chittered in agreement, their various appendages gesturing dismissively at our exhibits. I bit my tongue, remembering the diplomatic briefing. Earth had only recently joined the Federation, and we couldn't afford to offend our new allies. But when Kethax's assistant knocked on the century-old display case, something in me snapped. This primitive weapon helped shape human history, I said, unlocking the case. Would you like a demonstration? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The delegates gathered around, their varied anatomies betraying obvious amusement. The old revolver felt heavy in my hands, a piece of living history from when humanity first truly began to advance its weapons technology. The Federation representatives watched with barely concealed disdain as I explained its mechanics. Fascinating, Thax remarked sarcastically. You actually propel small pieces of metal using controlled explosions. How did your species survive long enough to achieve spaceflight? More diplomatic laughter followed. I loaded a single round into the cylinder, my hands steady despite my rising anger. The indoor range was still functional. We used it for historical demonstrations. Perhaps a practical demonstration would be more convincing. Kethax waved a crystalline appendage. By all means, entertain us with your antique. The other delegates moved to the observation area, their translator devices picking up every condescending whisper. I took my stance, years of historical weapons training kicking in. The revolver's weight felt perfect, its worn grip telling stories of countless hands before mine. I aimed at the target downrange, took a breath, and squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of gunpowder igniting echoed through the chamber. The delegates jumped, their various biological and mechanical sensors going haywire at the sudden percussion. Kethax's crystalline form actually resonated from the sound wave. When the smoke cleared, the target showed a perfect center mass hit. The rune had fallen silent. Impossible. Kethax whispered, his crystalline structure still vibrating slightly. Our scans showed no energy weapons, no plasma containment, no antimatter chambers. How did it? I smiled, carefully unloading the revolver. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most reliable. This weapon is over 300 years old, and it still works perfectly. How many of your plasma rifles can claim the same? The delegates huddled together, discussing rapidly in their native tongues. I caught fragments of their conversation through their translators. Words like kinetic energy and projectile velocity and penetration potential. Kethax approached the firing line, his crystalline form catching the light. Human curator, he said, his tone notably more respectful. Our preliminary scans suggest this weapon could potentially breach our standard personal shield technology. Would you be willing to discuss this further? I placed the revolver back in its case, my smile widening. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes being underestimated was exactly the advantage humanity needed. An excellent question, Ambassador, I replied, maintaining my diplomatic composure. But before we discuss this further, I believe we should move to a more secure location. The weight of centuries of human military history pressed down on my shoulders as I led the delegation through the museum's restricted archives. Behind us, automated security systems hummed to life, their sensors tracking our movement through the climate-controlled vaults. The aliens' biosignatures triggered subtle alerts that only I could feel through my neural implant, standard procedure for dealing with off-world visitors. You see, I continued, gesturing to the rows of preserved weapons. Humanity's primitive approach to warfare wasn't just about the technology. It was about understanding fundamental principles that even advanced civilizations sometimes overlook. Kethax's crystalline form shifted, refracting light in patterns that my translation software interpreted as intense curiosity, such as... The other delegates leaned in, their earlier mockery replaced by genuine interest. I stopped at a reinforced vault door, my palm print triggering its ancient mechanisms, such as the fact that sometimes the most effective solution isn't the most advanced one. Your energy shields, impressive as they are, were designed to stop plasma weapons and energy beams. But kinetic weapons, that's a different story entirely. The vault opened to reveal a small firing range, different from the public one upstairs. This one contained displays of ballistic data, impact analyses, and most importantly, examples of various shield technologies, both human and alien. When humanity first encountered alien civilizations, I explained, setting up a demonstration, we quickly realized our outdated projectile weapons had an unexpected advantage. Your shields were optimized for energy weapons, but physical projectiles, they passed right through. The delegates murmured among themselves, their translation devices working overtime to keep up with their rapid discussions. I could see the dawning realization in their various sensory organs. They'd inadvertently revealed a critical vulnerability in their defenses. Of course, I continued, modern shields have been adapted to handle kinetic weapons, but that's exactly my point. Sometimes the old ways force new innovation. Thax moved closer to one of the displays, his crystalline structure analyzing the data. Your species, you kept developing both technologies, energy weapons and projectiles. I nodded, bringing up a holographic display of human weapon evolution. We learned early on not to abandon proven technology just because something new comes along. Every approach has its advantages. The ambassador's form flickered with what I recognized as concern. And these, historical weapons, how many are still functional? Before I could answer, my neural implant buzzed with an urgent message. Something was happening in orbit. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Ships that hadn't announced their arrival. The emergency lights flashed red, and the vault door began its automatic lockdown sequence. I looked at the worried faces of the delegation and then at the ancient weapons surrounding us. Sometimes, the old ways weren't just interesting history. They were survival. The vault's emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow as alarms blared throughout the facility. My neural implant was flooding with tactical data. 3 unidentified vessels had dropped out of hyperspace and were positioning themselves around Earth's orbital defense grid. Those aren't Federation ships, Thax announced, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. Their energy signatures matched the Raxan Dominion. The other delegates recoiled at the name. The Raxan were notorious pirates and raiders who preyed on newly admitted Federation worlds. I quickly accessed the Vault's security systems. They're jamming our long-range communications. We can't contact the Federation fleet. My hands moved swiftly over the control panel, bringing up the museum's defense protocols. And our orbital defenses are designed to handle energy weapons, not their hybrid tech. They're using our own shield vulnerability against us, Thax realized, his voice carrying a new respect for human ingenuity. But surely Earth has planetary defenses. I smiled grimly, unlocking several weapon cases. We do. But first, Ambassador, I need to know, how good are you and your delegates at handling antique weapons? The museum's subsystems reported multiple breaches topside. The Raxan were already landing, likely assuming the museum was just a civilian target. They hadn't realized this building housed more than just history. Our shields are failing, one of the delegates announced, their bioluminescent patches flashing in distress. Their weapons. They're using some kind of modified kinetic energy hybrid. I distributed the weapons, a mix of historical firearms and modern hybrid designs. Earth didn't just preserve these weapons, Ambassador. We learned from them. Every guard in this facility is trained in both ancient and modern combat techniques. The vault shook as explosions rocked the upper levels. Through the security feeds, I could see the Raxan troops advancing, their overconfidence evident in their loose formation. They expected an easy conquest, using their advanced technology to overwhelm what they thought was a primitive world. Thax hefted an old rifle, his crystalline form adapting to support its weight. They don't know about your weapons archives, he said, understanding dawning in his faceted eyes. They don't know what they're walking into. I chambered around in my personal sidearm, a hybrid design that looked deceptively like its ancient predecessor. No, they don't. And that's exactly why we're going to win. The vault's inner door began to spark as the Raxans started cutting through. History, I told the gathered delegates as we took our positions, is about to repeat itself. The door's locks began to fail, and I could hear the raiders' overconfident chatter through their own translation devices. They were about to learn the same lesson that every invader of Earth eventually learned. Never underestimate old technology in the hands of those who truly understand it. The vault door burst open in a shower of sparks, but instead of Raxan troops, we faced something far worse. Federation peacekeepers in full combat gear. Thax's crystalline form dimmed in recognition. Ambassador, the lead peacekeeper announced, step away from the humans. They violated Federation law by maintaining illegal weapons archives. Their energy rifles hummed ominously. I kept my weapon trained steady. Interesting timing, I said, noticing how the peacekeeper's armor looks suspiciously similar to Raxan design. Almost like you knew exactly when those raiders would attack. Thax's form pulsed with sudden understanding. The Raxan aren't raiders, he whispered. They're a Federation Black Ops team. This was a setup. The lead peacekeeper removed his helmet, revealing features that confirmed our suspicions. Earth's admission to the Federation was conditional, he stated coldly. All military technology was to be surrendered. Instead, you hid weapons under the guise of a museum. And the Raxan attack was your excuse to discover them. I finished, pieces falling into place. Except you didn't expect our primitive weapons to be actually functional. The museum's ancient security system suddenly activated, hidden turrets emerging from the walls. But they weren't firing energy bolts or plasma. The sound of mechanical clicks echoed through the vault as centuries-old firing mechanisms chambered very real, very physical rounds. See, that's the thing about us humans, I said, noting how the peacekeeper's shields hummed with energy. We don't just preserve history. We learn from it. The standoff intensified as both sides realized the true stakes of this confrontation. This wasn't just about weapons anymore. This was about humanity's right to protect itself, even if that meant keeping some old-fashioned secrets. The question was, would the Federation risk an interstellar incident over a museum's collection? The answer came in the form of distant explosions, but this time they weren't from above. They were coming from below. The underground explosions grew louder, and suddenly the vault's floor panels slid open. Rising from hidden elevators were rows of museum security staff, all wearing vintage military gear from different periods of human history, their antique weapons at the ready. You see, I explained to the shocked peacekeepers, a museum isn't just about preserving artifacts. It's about preserving knowledge. The security team moved with practiced precision, their old-world tactics catching the Federation forces completely off guard. Thax stepped forward, his crystalline form radiating authority. As Federation ambassador, I declare this facility under diplomatic protection. He turned to face the peacekeeper commander. These weapons aren't illegal. They're cultural artifacts, and Earth has every right to maintain them. The commander's face twisted with fury. Their weapons bypass our shields. They're a threat to your superiority? Thax interrupted. Perhaps that's exactly what the Federation needs. A reminder that newer doesn't always mean better. I watched as the commander's troops lowered their weapons, realizing they were outmaneuvered not just tactically, but politically. With the ambassador's declaration, any action against the museum would be an act of war. Besides, I added, accessing the museum's central database, every weapon here is registered with Earth's government as a historical artifact. If you'd bothered to check the diplomatic paperwork, the commander's communicator chirped. A direct message from Federation High Command. His face paled as he read it. Apparently, someone had been transmitting our entire confrontation. As the peacekeepers retreated, Thax turned to me. Impressive strategy, Curator. But tell me, did you plan this? The working weapons? The trained security force? I smiled, returning the old revolver to its display case. Let's just say Earth learned long ago to keep a few surprises in reserve. Now about that weapons technology discussion. But before I could finish, Every light in the facility suddenly went dark. In the distance, something ancient and mechanical began to power up. Something much, much bigger than a mere handgun. Sometimes the best kept secrets are the ones still waiting to be revealed. Emergency backup power bathed the facility in a deep blue glow, revealing something massive emerging from the floor, a fully restored Sherman tank, its engine rumbling to life. The Federation peacekeepers froze in their tracks. "Gentlemen," I announced, patting the tank's weathered armor, "meet the crown jewel of our cultural preservation program. Still runs perfectly after all these centuries." Canax's crystalline form vibrated with what I could only interpret as laughter. "A museum that's actually a fortress, hiding in plain sight. Brilliant." His delegates gathered around the tank, their various sensory organs taking in every detail of the ancient war machine. The peacekeeper commander, still clutching his now useless energy rifle, finally broke into a resigned smile. "I have to admit, we underestimated you. All of us did. We thought Earth was just another primitive world trying to play catch-up." "That's the thing about humans," I said, helping Kithax climb onto the tank for a better look. "We don't abandon what works. We build upon it. Every piece in this museum tells a story of innovation, of finding new ways to solve old problems." The ambassador's form pulsed with bright colors as he examined the tank's main gun. "The Federation has become complacent, relying too heavily on energy weapons and shields. Perhaps it's time we remembered that diversity in technology, like diversity in species, makes us stronger." Over the next few hours, as Federation engineers excitedly studied our historical artifacts, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. What started as an attempt to humiliate Earth had turned into a revolution in military thinking. Sometimes the best path forward is to look backward. Thax approached me as the last of the inspection teams finished their work. "The Federation Council has approved a new classification for Earth's Weapons Museum. You're now officially designated as an advanced military research facility, specializing in alternative warfare technologies." I raised an eyebrow. "Alternative? You mean primitive?" "I mean revolutionary," he corrected, his crystalline form glowing warmly. "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. We just needed someone to remind us of that." As I watched the Federation ships depart Earth's orbit that evening, I thought about how a single antique revolver had changed the course of interstellar politics. The museum would stay open, its ancient weapons serving as both a reminder of human ingenuity and a warning to those who might underestimate us. After all, in a galaxy full of plasma rifles and energy shields, sometimes the best surprise is a simple pull of a trigger. And Earth, well, we'll keep preserving our history, just in case we need to make some more.